Test, test, test. Check, check, check. I don't know if it hears me or not.
4 out of 10.
We'll see. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, it's
Okay. So,
correct.
yeah, but over here I have to know. And it is. But anyways, guys, I'm not going to yell today. Please help me out. So we're looking at inverse trig functions here. And we're going to just take a look at how they work. We do know that the sine, the cosines are just repetitive functions. Cyclical in nature, they just repeat themselves over and over and over. It's going to be kind of hard to take that thing and actually do a reflection. So we're going to have to put some restrictions on the domain. We're not going to look at the whole function, just some parts of it. Because then we'll be allowed to create what's an inverse on that point, okay? So, here's what we're looking at. We'll go as far as we can. If we need to go into next week, then we will. That's fine, because we're not testing until like May or something.
This will be your final.
That was not funny, but okay. That actually made me a little scared. That was my nervous laugh. All right, so, sorry. Just some things again to remember. If you have a point A, B on one function, then the point B, A should exist on its inverse, correct? That would be great. Come on up. Awesome. No, I have no corona. Except for that one.
Alright, read the whole thing.
Oh, sure.
Alright, here are some helpful things to remember from our earlier discussion of inverse functions. If no horizontal line intersects the graph of a function more than once, the function is one-to-one as an inverse function. If the point AB is on the graph of f, then the point BA is on the graph of the inverse function. Denoted f to the inverse, or f's inverse, the graph of f inverse is a reflection of the graph of f about the line y equals x.
Are you going to put it in English now? Can you translate?
So, here's what it's saying. You guys remember how we used to check for functions before? Like if it was a function or not? What was the rule we checked? The vertical line test, right? And if that line didn't cross more than one time, then we said, yay, you're a function, right? But there are special types of functions called one-to-one functions, okay? And those are the ones that not only pass the vertical line test, but also what's called a horizontal line test. So if it passes both tests, that means it's called one-to-one, and an inverse for it will exist. That's what it's saying. Thank you. Here you go.
Anything you need me to read?
Okay.
Holy hole. Oh my god, I'm not having a good time. Oh, this is really impressive.
Anybody still need that slide? No? Okay. So here's an example. Here is this sine or cosine?
Sine.
This is sine.
It says it.
Oh.
I didn't see it, I swear.
I know.
And we know that it is sine because it's crossing. It's crossing at the origin. Okay. Is sine a one-to-one? Is it a function?
Yeah.
Yes, it's a function. Is it a one-to-one function?
So wait, a one-to-one function is
How do
like
we
a
know
dot. How do you have a thing that passes both?
No, you have to pass both tests.
That's
So,
what I'm saying.
so I can have a vertical line test, right?
Oh.
So if I took a vertical line like this,
No, yeah.
where do I ever cross it twice?
Never.
I don't.
Yeah. But
So in
no.
order for it to be a one-to-one function, it also has to pass the horizontal line test.
Yeah, but like, I don't know. I can't think of anything that would pass that too.
Linear, it will only cross a one line.
Right. So is this a one-to-one function?
No.
Oh, so it's not
Oh,
one function because
linear.
it crosses the horizontal.
Right. So this
Who said that?
so this is not a one-to-one function, right? If it's not a one-to-one function, does it have an inverse? No. But we know that just about everything in math, right, should have an inverse operation. So we have to take some steps in order to be able to find that, okay? So what we do is we limit the domain. We limit the domain, and we're going to limit in this case from negative pi to pi halves. Sorry, negative pi halves to pi halves. And this is what we're going to get. So if we take the little chunk from negative pi halves to pi halves, then we can do an inverse on that piece, can't we? That makes sense? Can you guys see what we did there?
Not really.
No? Okay, so sine goes to the point, doesn't it? Let me go back. How can I go back? Let me go back. So here's the sine curve, correct? You're okay with that? So instead of looking at the whole curve, because it's not going to pass the vertical line test, I'm going to take the piece that goes from here to right about here. We're going to only look at that piece. Because now that piece would be one-to-one, wouldn't it? It would pass both the horizontal line test and the vertical line test. Okay? Why would I want to take the piece from here to here?
Because that doesn't.
I would just fail the test again, wouldn't I? Okay? So I don't want that. And so that's where you want to be very careful which piece you're going to take there. That's what they did. So when we look at that and we try to take its inverse, remember, an inverse is simply a reflection of this over the line y equals x, which is what you're seeing here. Okay? We've taken that and we reflected it across that line y equals x. So now, because my amplitude was from -1 to 1, what does that become in my inverse function? My amplitude was 1, right? So that means my range was from -1 to 1. That should become my domain in the other function. See that? And there's my domain. Because the range was from -pi-halves to pi-halves. Now the amplitude over here is going to be pi-halves. Go down pi-halves, go up pi-halves. But it's that same curve, certain piece of the sine curve. Why am I holding this still? Makes me feel weird. Okay, write that stuff down. You're going to need to know what that is. You want the domain, you want the range on this bad boy. What's the period of this new function?
Is it the same?
The period.
Period 1.
Right. Did you say that? Oh no.
And I
Alright.
said 1. How is it 2?
What's the distance from -1 to 1?
Oh.
It's what?
What's the distance from -1 to 1?
1. Like, not 2.
Well, actually, I shouldn't even say period because period talks about the repetition, doesn't it? And is this going to be repeating itself? No. So we'll just say the domain, the range are going to be. So if I can Kirby that, take it all back. I was just trying to hear your math fight.
I have a question.
Yeah, what's up?
So find a period you do.
No, I'm going to take that back. I said period and I said a minute ago, I shouldn't be saying period. Because are these repetitive now? Are they cyclical anymore? No, I cut a piece out now, didn't I? And I'm only looking at that.
Okay. That's a different, like, I'm just wondering.
Okay,
So the find period, you do 2 pi divided by b, right?
correct.
What about the phase shift?
The phase shift is something you're gonna, is it C over B?
What is C? It's,
Well, they're gonna go in order. They're gonna go A, B, C, D.
okay.
So if you're looking at, all right, which one are you looking at, sine? We'll just do sine. You'll have A, sine, B, X,
That's a minus, so H is C, right?
minus C, plus D. And I don't like B there. I factor it out, but that's the way you'll probably see it. Okay? Yeah. Oh, erase. Okay. So if we were to put these together on the same graph, what would you expect it to look like? What would we expect it to look like if, in relation to each other? We talked about that, right? One more time? There's a little bit more to swoop. Can you talk about what it's swooping over?
Reflecting over y equals.
What?
Y isn't
Just
it
keep
like,
saying that.
Y equals insert blank.
yeah, insert blank. I'll let you insert. Like an axis. What is?
I'm looking at my people back there.
It reflects over
Is
the
it equals?
RJ.
He does not even look like RJ. No, his nickname's RJ. Oh, I thought we were talking about RJ. I was like, that's disgusting.
What, can you imagine what the graph of these two together would look like? What should they look like? Even if you can't visualize them, you know they should have something in common, right?
What's the, I don't know, you're asking him.
Yeah, I'm kind of asking everybody because,
Should I answer?
Bro, my brother's water
You wanna help him out?
has like that button that you like press to open, like to drink. And I've been, it's like, okay, it's like your water thing, your coffee line, you have to press the button to drink. And my brother's water bottle's like that, but I didn't realize you had to press the button. So I'm sitting there like trying to figure out how to get the water out for like 10 minutes.
Munoz. Hey.
That wasn't the answer to the question.
Kind of, not really. I'm in the middle of a lesson. What's up? They're thinking right now. Go ahead. Rational expression. Rational expression. You want me to graph? Go.
Bro, she shoots
Okay.
so
So you-
it looked like in, yeah, so I didn't know. She probably looks like a
We were in a fight in school. She's like the no, but they
That was the most far away from me. Yeah, that was the most.
No, I didn't mean it. Like
far.
no,
I didn't know my like I don't because I was like it's either gonna work or it's not gonna work. Not that one.
Because there's a rule of this continuity.
Like I stopped it just like a year ago.
Or if that's what it is,
That's cool. I'm gonna take. Well, the calculator's not smart enough to figure out.
I like it because they're not
The values there, but I'm gonna take a look at that.
But we were driving. They thought it was dead. And they were driving me.
Okay.
Or like, have you ever heard Jack Run?
Okay. I'll take a look. Bye.
The name.
That's fine. Okay.
yes.
What's it look like? Anybody? They should be what?
You cross over the origin 0, 0.
They should cross over the origin. Do they have to?
It just looks like it's kind of like.
These will, but do they have to?
It's like
Not
going from
necessarily.
like this.
But they should look. What's the magic word I'm looking for?
this.
Go. Yeah, exactly. They should be symmetrical on that line, right? Symmetric, reflective.
Not this.
Should look like that.
This
Well, yeah.
is 6.
My tissue.
Oh, right there in front of you.
Oh, thanks.
I need a pencil.
Should look like that.
I need a
Okay.
pencil.
When you see graphs, and they are symmetrical about the line y equals x, then you know that they're going to be inverse of each other. Okay, that didn't make me want to sneeze. Okay. It'll come. Oh man, all this heat just kind of came over me.
Yeah. Maybe it's a freaking scarf.
I just got like my whole body.
Side by side.
No,
Strip.
take a look at cosine as well. Where are you at? Here we are.
I'm so pressed about that.
So here's cosine. On cosine, we don't go negative pi halves to pi halves because we would have that cusp, right? It would look like a C where it would not be a 1 to 1. So for cosine, they're going to take the piece that goes from 0 to pi. From 0 to pi. And of course from negative 1 to 1.
Oh, and that's just the graph split, right?
That's the inverse on the right. That is the inverse on the right.
So it's like went from the x-axis to the y.
Let me see if I have a curve here. So here's cosine. Instead of taking the piece from negative pi negative pi halves to pi halves, we can't because then we would violate that horizontal line rule, wouldn't we?
100%.
You see that?
Uh-huh. Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so instead of doing that, what they're going to do is they're going to take the piece that goes from 0 to pi, and that's what we're going to look at and find its inverse. Okay?
100%. Okay.
Go back to what here? Okay.
That is stop. Remember the figure that's right. I keep getting parentheses instead of brackets. I feel like so it's like I still
Yeah. I can confuse that hell at the and I know you do what's it called, not a bracket,
not bracket, a parentheses. Oh, like, is that what it's called? Yeah, it's a parentheses.
Oh. Yeah, I know you do that when it's in a really good time. Have you seen that when there's like girls who's like,
I think it's like bracket, but
they're like, what? She's like,
and the little girl, she's all Johnny, what's this?
I did.
What do you say?
But now
Ow, I looked up my back hurts.
I'm really proud of myself today. You shouldn't be. You were supposed to see that.
You're in the front.
But I was basically like, even like hide it. You're like, oh shit. Renegade. I'm surprised I don't know
You're
that.
watching too much TikTok.
I really don't have the app. I just watch it on YouTube. I would never get
TikTok compilations? No.
got all the best parts. You know, the filter through the tracks.
That's not a bad idea.
I did it with mine too. Like I would just watch compilations.
I had
You know,
mine.
or
I had
Instagram and
I made
I tried to. I tried. I didn't know how.
I just looked funny. Like they were good.
Can I change it?
What would you do?
Okay.
I know kids great. And it slid up and you could type on it. That was the best phone.
I had problems like this, but that thing.
I bet Bella and Danny do that all the time, huh? I said I bet Bella and Danny do that all the time, huh? What? They don't? In your first hour?
They don't do that.
You do this though, right? And all that stuff?
Well, they got to and do some weird things, but they've done Renegade a couple times.
They don't really get it. I kept track.
They want to teach me. I like that.
It's easy. So all you gotta do, like you're gonna catch something and then you bring it down. Down. Okay, but you have to activate your other hand. He's like, let me keep this in my pocket.
I said you gotta activate your other one.
Yeah, you gotta pull this one out.
Activate.
It's like you're pulling things apart. That's good. I'm good at explaining. You know? So usually it's on her.
You guys ready? I have one more function to look at. We already did sine, we did cosine, then we have tangent. So let's take a look at tangent.
Oh, I was watching this. I was watching this.
So,
Dude, I would always take it too.
I heard my own voice. I was like, who is that idiot? And I was
thank
like,
you.
is it me?
Did you need the other one too? Okay. So we have tangent up here. Now, looking at tangent, it's going to make sense what piece we want to take, right? And it's obviously going to be that one period right here. That's what we're actually going to take for our inverse, which is going to be tricky on this one because the inverse of this bad boy is going to look like that, and it's going to go on to infinity. That should kind of make sense, right?
So wait, inverse is just a rotation.
It is. But it's over x and y.
But,
Yeah. So if you flip it twice over x and then y, you should hit the inverse.
Bless
you. I
That's
love
how you
those
get a
videos where like
reflection of white.
what singers say all the time and they're like they always sing. That was really bad. Take it back.
Take it back. Pretend you didn't say it. It's
I
cold.
miss mine.
It's so long.
So what?
The graph is my favorite Vine.
That's all.
No, you know who's my
The
favorite?
graph.
Oh my gosh.
It's right. You're making it worse. Just shut up.
I was her number one fan, bro. I was there since 10K.
You said it. I never liked your shows.
She's gotten more like recently.
I should have come with David.
She was funny before and with it, and then after. I don't know. Okay, she's been my 12-year-old entertainment. I was like telling her, you pretend to be a butterfly.
I used to like Brent on your but now he's 22 and he's still making the same videos.
Yeah, like when his life hasn't changed.
I was doing this whole I was a Macron girl. I don't want to.
Yeah, me too. What is that?
Everyone was.
I watched them.
Wait, what's that? It's like when you go and meet them.
I was a YouTube tour. I met Tez. I met the Gabby.
Yeah,
But I did that with Gabby. I met Casey. I don't know if you know.
I was
Oh my god, dude! I've never talked about this. This story is secret. I went to so many music tours. It's like it tastes horrible.
I remember the Gabby show.
That was
I used to love her.
I had like everything Barbie.
I met Matthew. I went on stage with Matthew Espinosa. Me too. Shawn Mendes was the girls. Yeah.
Also, my mom wouldn't let me get a Nerf.
And Cameron Dallas.
My dad was on a Barbie mansion.
Yeah.
My dad went to freaking that.
I just watched from afar. I just
No, I went for my birthday. I for birthday.
I would be jealous because I would be like, oh, I want to be her, but I never wanted to.
At the time, I was a baddie. Freaking, I met Matthew.
You guys were terrible.
Or like Abby show, I loved her. Like I was obsessed.
I hated her. I didn't like she was my partner, but I was like,
Oh wait, Matt Prime is 20 years ago.
but it wasn't Macron. It was after they broke up. But they still like were friends. So like, ew, I didn't want to tell you why. I know the whole story why they broke up. They're freaking mad at your Bart.
Oh my god.
Wow. So gross. Like I knew her. I knew her. I knew everything. I was 100%. And I was like, well, you know, I was like, just looking my way up to Ash Freer, but he never comes to the duty tour.
We were partying with our parents.
Literally, like, I love her. I'm like, listen to all this stuff.
Is that just one part?
She's drawing the graphs.
But when she was there, I was
I was
like,
drawing the graphs.
well, I didn't hate her then, but I didn't really pay attention.
I thought it was with the domains.
Yeah, but oh, I see what she did. Because your paper was like horizontal.
Yeah.
It's a rough time.
My sister threw a party and
I still have my hair
still
shirt.
sorry.
You're not sorry. You did it.
Things are starting like.
All right, cool.
so I jumped up in the truck trying to fire.
I can't believe you actually went to those things. Like, big That's wow. That's okay. I went to Comic Con.
All those pictures I didn't play so not Monday. Literally me sitting on stage. Is that with the microphone?
Well, it depends on which one you're talking about. If you're talking about the domain,
Yeah, that's pretty bad. Twice.
um,
And dressed up the first time.
if we're talking about these endpoints, those are where the asymptotes are. So this gets closer, 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 but never touches it. Okay, that's why they're parentheses. On the other ones, those are actual values in the function. Therefore, they are equal to negative pi halves and pi halves on the sine function. And then we know that we can't ever get to infinity, so that's why we use parentheses there as well. We can never equal those. Okay? Does that answer your question?
Infinity plus 1.
Huh?
Said infinity plus 1.
Infinity is not a number. You can't add to it.
Oh, that's so funny, Maddie. Good job.
Thank you. I should be a comedian.
All right. You need a calculator. You're gonna need a calculator.
Is it trooper?
can do
How?
It's a value. Alright, got
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
But what if is it ever gonna ask for like an exact value, or is this like the exact value?
No, because you're rounding them already. If it says round to 4 places, but yeah, you will have to do some exact values.
Alright, I got my answers. Wait, does that
But
do,
some
like,
of them
an
are not worth doing, like these.
mode?
It'll tell you on your calculator.
It doesn't matter what mode, right? Heck.
Your rating mode.
Okay. Everyone do the answers.
Mine's in degrees.
Here, let me check it out too. Oh, actually, let me go back.
I know. Like, very wrong. The answer's South Africa. Alright.
Dude, that stupid fake chain that I got from Forever 21, the pendant has literally Africa on it. It's the most embarrassing thing ever. Like, that's so wrong to do, baby.
I didn't think of the end.
Yeah. Like, Forever 21 just pisses me off. 'Cause it's so cute from far away, and it's Africa. Like, literally the outline of Africa.
Well, maybe it's meant for, Africans. If they want to, like, represent,
Didn't they go bankrupt? Africa? Forever 21?
I was like, they've been big forever.
It's like 2 conversations going on. But one talking about each their own thing.
Alright, can I write the answer? Oh, dang it.
And they're,
You want to do the next one?
oh, wait. Oh, I didn't.
Negative 1.5423.
That's what I got.
Oh,
Make sure you can do those on the
That's
calculator.
crazy.
Make sure you rate
That's
those.
what I got.
bro, I have so
What
many
would
happens if I was in degrees? Freaking calculator explodes. I'm so funny. Bro, if I had, did you write that? If I had $1 for every time I made a joke and no one laughed, do you know how much? Oh my god. Is that true?
Dude, that's what comedians do.
You guys got both?
They get paid for that.
Here's the other one.
I'm here to be serious. And just everyone in the house just like,
Alright, you guys good?
and you're like, so let me tell you guys.
Please make sure you get this in your notes or your pictures or whatever it is you're doing. Should make sense to you. Well, let me explain real quick.
Explain, let me explain.
If you're asking for an angle and you have the angle, you're asking for the sides, you're asking the opposite operation, if you will. So these are going to undo each other and you'll simply get whatever x is going to be. Okay? And that is commutative, if you will. So if I have the sine inverse of a sine value, they're going to undo each other and x is going to equal x. Same is true for your cosines and your tangents. So if you're going to do the tan of it, or some function of its inverse, they're just opposites of each other. Remember, we take an inverse. You still do that?
Still.
Wow.
We've been doing
That's
it.
how high school functions.
We've been doing.
Which one's yours? Is it just iPhone or is it MJ's iPhone? Oh, it says MJ. It didn't pop up yet.
You said it, Mia.
Mine's called MJ's.
Well, I figured.
Is it an iPhone?
Mine
or-
says MJ's iPhone. Oh, I have an Android, my bad. Sorry.
I hate when people says iPhone. They're like, can you airdrop it again? Like,
There's the iPhones.
Well, I do have an iPhone.
I think mine says Gabby, does it?
mine says
Let's test it.
Oh, you gave it to me.
Does it work?
I was wondering, like, what the
Does it
heck?
work it? I'd have my receiving.
I know what it is, it's
Everyone
Malouis.
is scared to airdrop their pictures.
I have iPhone, MJ.
She'll come back. She'll come back.
That's just on the phone.
No, so they left it here.
to be fair, I forget we did.
So let's try this out real quick. Y'all ready?
Yes.
What's it? Sorry. Thank you.
Is it worth it? Is it worth
Hey, it's gonna take a picture. It'll last longer. I've been saying stupid long. Same color as your skin. You can tell.
I am not that.
Well, like when you're looking through the lace, no one's gonna be like,
That's not what I meant.
what is it, a freaking doily? I don't know what it called. Doily. Doily.
How do I
not that bad. That's
Do
your
you
right.
want to see my first set of notes?
We had like 10,000 years of history.
It just looks like handwriting.
That's not like 2,000. That's not fair.
Oh my gosh.
We had 10,000 years of history.
No.
Ancient Mesopotamia.
Dude. I take.
That's an E.
Hey.
Did you get these as well, the intervals?
Ours was
Okay,
all
cool.
just words.
So,
I just circled like 7.
You guys.
alright, go ahead and try this out, please.
That looks hard.
Please put these on paper. I think this is what I'm going to collect from you guys.
Oh, easy. 0.7. Pi.
Wait,
Negative 0.2.
wait, my notes, Mr. Munoz, like the stuff.
I got, if you're gonna
No,
collect it, then.
like when I do questions
Oh,
like
the cancel. What's doing that?
That's what I was like, 0.7.
this. Oh, hey, hey,
On paper?
careful you look at the ranges where they exist, okay? They do kind of annoy each other, but only on certain intervals. Did you get those pieces down?
How weird is our art class?
Okay, good. All right, go back now. Take a look.
I'm not understanding what you just said. Be careful.
They will undo each other. It's very true, but on a certain interval. So if you're taking the sign of sine inverse only when x is an interval from -1 to 1.
So then otherwise what
If
do
you
you do?
do sine inverse, remember sine inverse goes from negative pi halves to pi halves. Okay? That's what I'm saying. So be careful what you're asking. If you want to reference it, okay?
So like if it doesn't work, what would it be? Like if it's
What would the
not.
answer be?
I couldn't tell
If
you.
it's not in the interval, then it's.
It's 0 or it would be undefined, right?
Or which one?
Well, let's take a look.
Wait, so what do you do when it's not? Just do what it says. You're collecting this one?
No, I'm thinking about it. Remember I told you I don't have everything planned out yet?
So, seconds. Oh my god. The answer is
Gosh.
it's a lob.
Glob. Difference between this.
Wait, what's the brackets? Like, what's the difference? Oh my god, I feel sneeze.
It's the same.
Let's see.
They're just inclusion symbols.
Let's see.
They're just inclusion symbols.
He said he might.
Put it over there, please. I want people to have access to it.
Oh.
I thought you said do it
I know.
over there.
I know, I thought you said what's over there. I was like,
Dang. Dang.
Wait, you just get the thing back.
Oh my gosh, is lotion? Is this accessible to everyone?
Been there since last semester.
It used to be.
It's because a couple of them wanted to expire like 4 years.
Someone's talking about hot water, you know, so I threw
Yeah,
it
because it
away.
expired like a million years ago.
Cause like the.
Gotta get those ankles.
I know. I gotta get mine. You know.
Sorry, let me just like stick my whole leg in your face.
Skincare doesn't look anyways expire.
Whoa. I was just talking. I was looking at that when I was talking to you. This is pretty good. That's what mine looked like. You get super thirsty both eyes.
What is that?
Ow, my arm's
That line.
Okay. How many people went ahead and used their calculator?
How many people had to?
How many people just went ahead and used their calculator? Good.
I'm dying. So
I have a charger if you want to charge it.
I was charging too. It's just for some reason it's not. Letting
So if you just throw this in your calculator, it's going to tell you what the solution's going to be. And if it's 0, if it's undefined,